my name is Monica Duarte and I am a trauma and certified Go Coach. I'm also a Latina and one of my passions is to help driven Latinas overcome the internal obstacles that are holding them back from embodying their best selves. And one of those obstacles is trauma. Today I'm going to share with you 3 ways that our indigenous ancestors' way of life is still showing up in our culture. And I'm also going to share one of the obstacles that is still impacting us that originates from our indigenous ancestors and how to overcome it. I'm Mexican and my great-grandfather was Aztec, so the examples I'm going to share are coming from my culture. However, if you're a Latina from a different country, you can also look back into your history and see how my examples kind of fit with yours. One of the reasons I felt it was important to share this is because tomorrow, or if you're watching this next day, it's our first day of the Dead. Hence why I'm wearing this really cute blouse. But I just felt it was appropriate to talk about this, and talk about our ancestors from a different perspective. Sadly, a lot of Latinos have been colonized so much that we don't realize that we're actually naturally doing things that are natural or originate from our indigenous ancestors. I'm focusing on our indigenous ancestors because it is a fact that most Latinos are at least 50% indigenous. And it's really important that we connect back to those roots because that's who we are. Another thing that inspired this topic is a book I started reading called From Indians to Chicanos. I have it right here. And it is from James Diego Vigil. He basically talks about from us transforming from being indigenous people to Chicanos. And there is a lot of rich history and a lot of powerful insight. Honestly, reading this book has helped me in my own healing journey and reconnecting back with my indigenous roots. So I highly, highly recommend that you read it. Back in the day, during the time and the empire of the Aztecs or Mexica, Mexica actually originated from what is now the US. They lived up here and they moved down to what is now Mexico. A lot of them settled down there. That's where they created their new home. There were 3 aspects to the Aztec or Mexica people that they were really known for. One of them was agriculture. So for the Mexica, for the Aztecs, everything evolved around the land. And their identity was created based on the land. If they had more land, they could grow crops, they could grow food, and this was really important for their survival. The Aztecs became masters at being able to grow things, to grow food for their communities, and because it became so important, such an important part of the culture, again, they started to create other aspects of the culture based around agriculture, some of them being arts and spirituality. Another aspect that they were really well known for is for building. If you go to Mexico, you can see the pyramids. They built those. So they were master builders. And also again, because agriculture was really important and everything was created around that, their spirituality was also based around that. So a lot of art, a lot of music, a lot of dancing was spiritual to them. So if you look at Mexicans now, we're literally doing the same thing that our ancestors did. We just don't realize that we're doing it. For example, a lot of Mexicans are really well known to work in agriculture, to work in the fields. And this comes again from our ancestors. A lot of Mexicans tend to work also in construction. They're naturally good at it because that came from our ancestors. Also, a lot of Mexicans are really good at art and dancing. And again, the reason for that is because that originates from our ancestors. We have been doing all of these things for generations and generations and generations. This is part of what makes us who we are. This is also why in a lot of the festivals and celebrations that we have, we always include these 3 aspects: food, spirituality, and art. We're also always building something, whether it's, creating crafts with our hand or building something like an altar for Day of the Dead. For me, when I realized this, it made me feel even more proud to be Mexican, to have my Aztec ancestry, my Aztec roots, because I understood that the reason I am the way I am in many aspects is because of my indigenous ancestors. I myself am super creative. I am very spiritually oriented, and I like creating things with my hands. I'm also very connected to the land. Like, I need to be in nature. I need to feel connected with nature. And being able to understand that all of these parts of me come from my indigenous ancestors helped me to reclaim my roots even more and my right to be here. Now, sadly, when the Spanish came and they invaded our country, they took all the beautiful things in our culture and made them into negative things. For example, when the Spanish came and they stole the land of my ancestors, when that happened, they basically uprooted them. And when they did that, because the identity of my ancestors was connected to the land, it robbed their identity. It robbed their purpose of being. What also happened is, again, being connected to the land was looked upon as sacred. It was a joyful thing. And when the Spanish came and stole the land, they basically turned my ancestors into slaves to work the land. So it no longer became a enjoyable thing. It was a very painful, traumatic thing. And it's really sad because, you know, a lot of people I've experienced, a lot of Mexican people, see working in the fields as something only poor people do, something that is not like like the greatest thing to do. It's a painful process, a painful experience, and it wasn't like that when my Aztec ancestors were here, when they owned the land, when they embraced the land. And it was because of the harm the Spanish did that got reversed. Both of my parents were farm workers. My dad is still a farm worker. My mom is not, but she worked in the fields for many years. And when I think about them now working in the fields, I feel proud because I know that they're doing something that is natural for our culture, that was natural for our ancestors. Now, it would have been great if it could have been an empowering thing instead of an oppressive thing, and where they were being used for a cheap labor and treated poorly. Now, with that, we also have to look at the impacts of colonization, how that impacted them, and being aware that trauma can get passed down from generations to generations. There is a science known as epigenetics that has proven that trauma can get passed down from generation to generation. They did a study with Jewish people that experienced the Holocaust, and noticing if there was any impacts from that was passed down to their future generations. And the science showed that there was factors that contributed to that trauma getting passed down to future generations. So when we look at this from our lens and our perspective of us indigenous people, this is also something we got to look at. That trauma that our ancestors experienced has most likely been passed down to us. And although we can inherit a lot of beautiful and good things from our ancestors, we can also inherit their trauma. It's really important that we do the work to heal ourselves, because when we're healing ourselves, we're also helping our ancestors finally heal from the burdens that they had to carry in order for them to survive the harm that their Europeans, the Spanish, did. And when you start to heal as well, you start to remove those inner blocks that are blocking you from moving forward with your dreams and goals. Because it is well known that trauma creates an inner distortion of yourself and how you see yourself and how you see the world and how you put yourself out in the world. So when you start to heal, you finally start to remove those inner obstacles, and you can navigate your life better. You can reach your goals better. Life just becomes a lot easier, and we don't have to keep living with the chains of our past still pulling on us. Another factor to this is because trauma gets passed down from generation to generation. When you heal yourself, you're also helping your children, because when you heal yourself, your children can notice that. They can feel it. And since you're a role model to them, they're looking up to you. When you heal yourself, you start to feel differently, you start to act differently, and your children will pick up on that, and they too, their path will be led in a very different, more positive way. If you want to learn how to do that, I invite you to join my Overcome Trauma coaching classes for Latinas only. I have one happening tomorrow, Wednesday, and this one we are going to be focusing on ancestral healing. So if you want to learn more about this topic and to begin to explore how to heal from this using a very powerful yet gentle and compassionate modality that I use to help my clients process trauma, I invite you to do that. I will post the link in the caption.